Hello, friends. It's wonderful having you back on the channel, and it's always beautiful, each time we get a little time to time. Today, we're going to be discussing the microbiome in a built environment. So, two concepts: microbiome, built environment. What do we mean by built environment? When we talk about built environment, we're talking about our houses, our offices, our business places, shops, schools, places where we conduct our business. Now, you know that these spaces are usually built in different kinds of infrastructure. We have furniture, we have windows, we have doors, we have glasses, we have all sorts of things in these environments. Now, these environments is important to understand that we also have microorganisms living in these environments and they affect us. They affect our health, they affect our output, they affect our mood, they affect so many things, and it's important to understand that there is a correlation between the kind of microorganisms in a built environment and our health in general. Now, like I said before, we are discussing microorganisms in a built environment. So I've explained to us now that when you talk about a built environment, we're talking about the infrastructure that we use to conduct our daily activities, our homes, our offices, and all of that. Now, microorganisms, it's important for us to, we've already established long ago that microorganisms are ubiquitous in nature, meaning that they can be found everywhere. Now, it's important that we study or try to understand microorganisms within built environments. Now, very quickly, let's look at some concepts that we've discussed in the past, but it might be important to just refresh our memory on these concepts. For an example, the concept of what a microbiome is, what microbiota is, they're important, and then we'll link it with the built environment. So when you say microbiota, we're talking about the totality of the organisms that are present within a particular space of interest or area of interest. What do I mean? If you talk about gut microbiota, for an example, you're talking about all the microorganisms that are present within the gut. Now, the gut of who? Maybe a human being, an animal, a sheep, a goat, whatever it is. So let's say you say you're talking about gut microbiota in human beings. Now you specify it. You're saying what it means in essence is that you're talking about the microorganisms that can be found, the totality of all the microorganisms that can be found within the gut. Now, the gut you talk about from the mouth, the alimentary canal, the stomach, the small, the large intestine, the colon, and the rectum. So, all the microorganisms that can be found along the stretch of this area of the human body is what we refer to as the microbiota, all the microorganisms. So you can have microbiota in the mouth, you can have microbiota in breast milk, you can have microbiota in different diverse areas of the body. You can have microbiota on the skin. So all these are important because it explains to us the concept of different microorganisms that can be found within a space or an area. Now you link it up discussing microbiome because many times these concepts can be interchanged, but sometimes these concepts also have different distinct meanings. So when you talk about when you talk about microbiomes this time around, they're talking about the totality of the organisms, their genes, their functionality, everything that surrounds those organisms is what we refer to as microbiome. When we're saying microbiota, we're talking strictly about the organisms themselves. When we say microbiome, we're looking at the organisms, their proteins, their genes, resistance, virulence, stress response, all these things together is what we gather together and discuss when we're talking about the microbiome. So we'll now see here, we know what microbiota is, we know what microbiomes are, we know what a built environment is. So how are they interrelated? Now it's important to realize that in a built environment where we have infrastructure, we have microorganisms. Studies have shown that if you pack into a house, a newly built house, or even if it's a house that is pre-existing and then you pack in, the signature of microorganisms in that house is going to change over the next 48 and 24 to 48 hours. Why? Because you have brought your own organisms to come and be in the mix. And over time, the organisms that are resident in your body and the body of your children and your spouses are the ones that are now going to be dominant within that environment. Now, why is this important? It's important because microbiology is linking up with architects, with other technical people in the building industry to understand that the health of occupants of a particular built environment is really, affected by the kind of microorganisms in that environment, and that there are ways by which we can, modulate, control the kind of microorganisms within an area. Let me give you a quick example. A house that is more ventilated and a house that is poorly ventilated. A house that has proper ventilation are going to have some particular kinds of microorganisms living in that house. You have more of bacteria that are aerobic in nature, and you have, it will be very different from a house where the ventilation is really poor. That lack of ventilation is going to affect the kind of microorganisms that will grow, and you can be certain that in a house that has poor ventilation, pathogenic microorganisms are more likely to grow. And when they grow, let's say they grow on breadcrumbs, they grow on food matter, they will grow, they will proliferate, and they won't be sent out by, when you have ventilation. It's very important that as we do all that we do, understand that in a built environment, we're always going to have issues where the microorganisms that are present in that built environment are going to be influenced by the way that that environment is built and the infrastructure of that environment. This is also important science that we do. And more studies can be done. We encourage that more studies are done, to look at different houses, the way they are built, and how it affects microbial composition within that house and within that space. Thank you for listening. Look forward to having more wonderful and